Welcome to Episode 1 of Nonprofit Navigators, a web series interviewing nonprofit stakeholders to discuss engagement and communication through digital media, with a focus on the challenges of a global pandemic. Today we're speaking with Mark Jackson, Chief Development Officer at Central Texas Food Bank, the largest hunger relief charity in Central Texas.
Hey everybody, this is Chris with Production 4 and Community Arts. We are with our program Nonprofit Navigator. We're engaging with nonprofits to discuss engagement through digital media with a focus on the particular challenges of COVID-19. Today we're with Mark Jackson, who's the Chief Development Officer at the Central Texas Food Bank. He's been there about 10 years. We're going to talk through some questions and have a conversation. First of all, thank you for being here, Mark. We really appreciate your time. I imagine you have plenty of other things you can be doing.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting and busy time for us at the food bank right now.
What was the moment in time, if you know, that prompted the food bank, the Central Texas Food Bank, which used to be the
Capital Area Food Bank. Capital Area Food Bank.
Capital Area Food Bank. Yeah. What was the point in time that the organization began? Was there some prompt for that?
Yeah, I mean, back in the 80s, there was a lot of interreligious ministry groups doing hunger relief work. They realized that, especially the homeless population in Austin needed support, and they were corralling resources. And at some point, they realized, hey, if we work together and pool our resources, we can have a much bigger impact. And that was really the impetus for food banking across the country, not just here in the Austin area. And then that has evolved substantially over time. Again, the inception of the organization was really around that emergency food assistance for the homeless population, and now we're really serving families that have jobs and are struggling to pay their bills every single month, and food or electricity or medicine is becoming an option that they have to choose between every single month, and that means that it's a much more substantial part of the population that we're working to keep fed.
That makes sense. I'm going to ask a question that I think I know the answer to, but I'm just curious what your response is to it. So research suggests, depending on which research you read, that 30 to 50% of nonprofits fail, whether it's in the first 3 years or eventually. So that's up to half of nonprofits gone. Why is the Central Texas Food Bank still around?
Well, yeah, I think, a lot of nonprofits are built and started by, very well-meaning and caring individuals who see a specific need around them and want to impact that. But sustainability and scale is important. The food bank is addressing a very substantial problem that the average person can easily understand. Hunger is a universal sort of thing that any human being could experience, and many have experienced. And then our ability from a logistical perspective to do so much with a dollar has really inspired a lot of people, because if you have a limited amount of philanthropic dollars, you can make a donation to a food bank and it's going to go a really long way. And so that's an easy message for us to sell. I think for many smaller nonprofits that are working to try and impact some very unique, challenging issues in their community, those are all incredibly valid efforts, but the messaging becomes much more difficult. And in an age where people are more and more distracted, trying to educate the public about these very specific, unique challenges in their community becomes harder and harder. And so I can see why smaller nonprofits that are not touching as many individuals in the community with a problem that is not as easy to understand could have struggled gaining funding and getting traction and getting the visibility for their issue that they're trying to impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Hunger is definitely easily understandable. We all eat several times a day. So in the absence of that, it's an easy problem to understand. So you mentioned about visibility. Nonprofits use media formats like digital, radio, TV, social in different ways. briefly, which has worked best for you as far as communicating your message or a result?
Historically, food banks have done really, really well in terms of old school direct response. So physically mailing out requests for donations and sending out newsletters to educate our constituency about what we're up to. And that has evolved substantially for us. We're doing everything now, and we are a very big organization with a large budget that has the opportunity to be in all of those spaces. For us, we really adapted digitally pretty early, and we invested in that. And I think that's paying off for us in terms of our ability to scoop up donations online. And as all of the social media platforms continue to evolve, it's made it easier and easier for people to engage and make donations to us there. We struggled early on with Facebook and other social media platforms to try and figure out how to make that a platform for more than just information sharing, but actual fundraising. But that's changing a lot as they've adapted the technology and made it so simple for people to host fundraisers or just make a donation via Facebook.
Out of the digital channels, would you say Facebook has been most successful for you?
Yes, and if you really look at, we look at the demographics of the people that support us, and Facebook has a lot of those folks now. There's definitely a lot of older individuals with capacity that spend a lot of time on Facebook and love to share information there, and that's been our wheelhouse in terms of the people that make donations to us. We've definitely got a lot of younger folks that love to spend their time and energy with us, and that's been a good engagement tool in terms of volunteerism as well. Austin has a really robust young economy with a lot of people in their 20s that are, they have great jobs, but they haven't built up capacity and maybe don't feel confident about making substantial financial gifts, but they do want to give back. And they come out in groups and volunteer with their colleagues, and that's a huge impact for us as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So you've tried lots of different kinds of communication. Some of it's probably paid, some's earned. What is the most unexpected thing that's happened from some kind of communication or marketing or advertising endeavor? And this can be either positive or negative, either something like maybe, we spent $1 million, we got no impressions, or hey, the neighbor's 8-year-old kid wrote a spot for us in the book. Is anything really unexpected?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting for us because so much of the traditional stuff that we do, it's hard to really get an understanding of instantaneous feedback of the success of that, right? So our TV ads and our billboards and our print stuff, we really just have to sort of look at the aggregate data from a fundraising perspective at the end of a campaign and say, hey, did we go up this year? Okay, it seems like that stuff was effective. But in the digital space, and in terms of earned media, we can really see more real time with like clipping services, and of course, just all of the tracking capacity that the different social media platforms have. We most recently had a story here locally that went national and gave a lot of attention. There's a young man by the name of Mace that has been basically doing a food and fun drive for us for the last 5 years, and he broke the 1 million meal mark in terms of total meals raised for our community this year. He's an incredible young man, and that's been a big story for us every single year. When he comes and drops off his check and all the food out of his parents' truck, it's been picked up and the story is shared, and it's clearly inspiring for folks. But this year, because of that 1 million meal story, it actually went national, and our clipping service started picking up the story from across the country, which, from a food bank perspective, we really do fundraise regionally. But if I think about my sister food banks, the 211 across the country, having a story like that get picked up even in another market, it means that it's drawing visibility to what we're doing and inspiring folks to support food banks across the country, which is an awesome outcome, because every food bank needs support, and every food bank is not meeting the need in their community right now.
Thanks for sharing that. That's outstanding. Yeah, visibility outside of, I mean, especially outside of your state has got to be huge.
Yeah.
So I'm going to shift a little bit. So we're in the middle, maybe some say maybe the beginning of a pandemic. What has been the biggest pivot for the Central Texas Food Bank since the COVID-19 pandemic began, and how are you adjusting?
Yeah. It's been interesting because, the sort of earliest conversations that you were seeing were talking about, hey, work from home. Some of the bigger tech companies that have a workforce that majority of them could easily transfer to work from home started doing so. And we were starting to think about our own internal operations a little bit, but it evolved so rapidly, and the recommendations related to social distancing from the CDC evolved so rapidly that, the first couple days we were thinking about our traditional model, which is something that we've been working on as a network of food banks for a very long time, is to provide the best quality experience for our clients that we can. And that is to provide as much nutritious food as possible. That's lots of fresh produce right now. 42% of the 52 million pounds of food we distributed last year was fresh produce. And a client choice model where possible. So, at all of our partner distributions, we really encourage a client choice model. At our mobile food pantry distributions, we are encouraging a client choice model. So this allows the clients to have the experience of going through and accessing the food that they want. They get to pick what they will actually eat, what their kids like. And we've had to abandon that. It quickly, it was very clear that model was just not going to work with the guidelines from the CDC. And we've now had to completely change our distribution to be based around emergency boxes. And so we are building as many emergency food boxes as we can. Right now, that's filling those with shelf-stable items, canned box items, pivoting away from as much produce because of how difficult that's going to be to distribute right now. All of our models, all of our direct distributions have changed to be drive-through models so that clients can pull up in a vehicle, pop their trunk, and allow us to put the food in their trunk. Again, mitigating human-to-human interaction so that we can do our part to help slow the spread. But the reality is that we're still on the front lines interacting with a lot of people every single day. We can't stop what we're doing, and so we're just trying to figure out the safest, best way to do it. We have volunteers coming into our building every single day to help us build these boxes. We're building between 1,000 and 1,500 of these boxes every single day in our warehouse. And we're having to do that with a diminished volunteer corps. And we're having to create an assembly line that keeps our volunteers 6 feet apart so they can practice social distancing. It's a difficult way of operating, but it's the only way we can do it right now. So we have been deemed as an essential operation by the city of Austin. And so we can continue to operate and get food out.
I have to imagine, so for a quick question, typically Central Texas Food Bank has been a distribution system without having necessarily direct clients. Are you saying that you now have direct clients that drive through and pick up boxes of food?
Yeah, so the overwhelming majority of our food traditionally is distributed through a network of 250 partner organizations. Those are like pantries and housing sites and soup kitchens, and but we have always operated a mobile food pantry program, or at least for over the last 10 years, where we set up a distribution in a parking lot in a community that is underserved. We currently have 4 of semis that are out doing these distributions 6 days a week. And that model is normally a client choice model. But as it stands right now, it's going to be a drive-through model for the foreseeable future. We're seeing dramatic increase in the numbers of people that are showing up at these distributions already. And the other part is that in some of these smaller communities, we've had to cancel these distributions because where they're located, they're just physically not capable to be turned into a drive-through model. And so we're doing our darndest to put information out, be at those distributions when they would normally happen, and direct those folks to either partner agencies nearby where we're going to be giving them more food, or directing them to mobile food pantries that are nearby, where we will ramp up again the volume of food, knowing that there will be an increase in folks looking to get something since they wouldn't get it at their normal distribution.
Great. I thank you for all that you're doing in the community. It's a little distressing to hear that the need is going up. I think we've talked some before, and I think success for Central Texas Food Bank would be to have 0 clients. To have more clients is going to be tough. I'm going to ask you a question that I'm going to ask all of the different nonprofits I speak with, and they're going to be vary in size, so your answer will differ, I'm sure. What would a $1 million donation do for your organization?
Yeah, right now, a $1 million donation to the Central Texas Food Bank would allow us to continue to operate this much more expensive model for the foreseeable future and purchase, additional infrastructure that would allow us to serve more and more clients. From a operational perspective, we moved into an amazing new facility almost 4 years ago that has dramatically increased our capacity to access and distribute food. And that's been a huge win for us. We were slowly making progress to what we would have called success in terms of distributing enough food for the amount of people that need it. We were falling short by about 25% of the total need in our community before the pandemic started. We know that number is now going to dramatically increase. And so everything about what we are doing is going to be bigger and more expensive. We are right now scrambling and being as scrappy and thoughtful as we can to make sure that we are meeting as much of the need as we can possibly do so in the short term. But we simultaneously are building our strategy on a long-term approach right now, because we've been serving people that have lost their jobs, are struggling to pay their rent, keep gas in the car for so long. We know that that's what's going to be in this community. That's just going to keep increasing. There's no doubt in our minds that the ripple effect for this is going to be happening for an extended period of time. So we're focused on the short term, but we know that a gift of $1 million, for example, would allow us to expand and build our operations for this, the real long haul, purchasing lots of food, hiring drivers, hiring warehouse staff to get the food in and out.
Cool, thank you. I just have one more question. By the way, anyone watching who can open their checkbook and stroke a check like that would be saving lives. I think that's fair to say. I just have one more question. These are difficult times. What message of hope or optimism can you share with people?
Yeah, it's very difficult, but I can tell you, I feel like I have an incredible job right now because I have a front row seat to the generosity of this community. The outpouring of support has just been immense. There have been so many new first-time donors to the food bank in the last 10 days. So many of our long-term partners and supporters in the community that I have relationships with proactively reaching out to me, texting me, emailing me, wanting to know what our needs are and how they can help. And that is so inspiring. It can be very, very easy to be depressed, filled with anxiety when you're watching the news and reading these stories. But I can tell you that people are so committed to making their neighbors' lives better right now. And the food bank is one of those ways. And it's truly inspiring to see what people have done just in the last 10 days. We feel like the work is just getting started, and we feel like the word is just getting out in terms of the role that food banks are going to play in the pandemic. And so we hope that we can have even bigger and better news to share in terms of the growth of our operations and the generosity of the community in the coming months.
Great. Hey, Mark, thank you so much for your time today. I know you have a lot of things to do. This is Mark Jackson, Chief Development Officer with the Central Texas Food Bank. This is Nonprofit Navigator. I'm Chris with Production for and Community Arts. Stay tuned. We're going to do more of these. Again, Mark, thanks for your time. Everyone stay healthy, respect the social distancing, and we will talk with you soon.
Thanks, Chris.